do Epic Mickey. So I get my my colleague off me. I'm gonna do Epic Mickey in a minute. Okay, guys, two things, guys. We're doing this real quick. Okay, maybe 76. We're doing Epic Mickey in a little bit, guys, but right now I want to watch this one thing first, then we're going to do Epic Mickey. So I have my colleague off me. So 5, 7, 6. Mickey will be after this quick vid I want to do real quick, then that's it. So 5, 23, 20. So, okay, guys. This first and Epic Mickey, okay? Here's a quick NASCAR video, then Epic Mickey. Okay? So, John, get off my butt. Okay. Have not seen this yet, so I don't know what it's going to be like. Something in lawyers, it says here.
An extreme concept.
So, after this, we'll do NASCAR.
Their primary sponsor, IK9, abruptly missed a payment, and the decals and banners on their cars and home.
Ooh. Missed a payment. Ooh, that doesn't sound good. We will be watching, guys, Epic Mickey in a bit. I wonder if Kaiser did it. I want to see what John's saying real quick. But first things first, we'll do this one thing first, then we'll do Epic Mickey. What? Yeah, she's being annoying. I don't know why. Where are you going? The garage is locked up. Okay. This is the first. Okay, guys, there's some things I want to do after this. I'm going to watch some Epic Mickey. But I'll do that after I watch this NASCAR thing. And there's something else I want to do, too, which we'll do on episode 77. Because I saw something, it's pretty interesting, and you see this because Ben would love to see from all the archives, but I'm going to do it myself. And I have never seen these yet, so. That I will do, John, okay? John, we'll do that. We'll do that in a bit, okay, John? Because we'll do that, John, in a bit. Actually, we'll do that in a little bit, okay? I have to get some stuff around. I have to move some wires around, yank out the... John, I'll do that in a bit, okay? I have to do this first. I want to watch this NASCAR video first. Then we'll build a NASCAR, then that's it, okay? But first things first, let's do this first. John, maybe do it... Fine, I'll do Epic Mickey another day then. Maybe Mickey will be a future episode. We'll do something else later, okay? Sure, we'll build a NASCAR later, okay?
At the midway point of the 2019 season, trouble suddenly struck the teams of Joe Gibbs Racing and Extreme Concepts Incorporated. Their primary sponsor, IK9, abruptly missed a payment, and the decals and banners on their cars and haulers came off, just as things were starting to get underway at the July Daytona race. However, just a few hours later, the team scrambled to put the logos back up where they belonged. As it turned out, the driver slated to start the races there at the track in the Xfinity and the Cup Series, Jeffrey Earnhardt, had backed out of his contract with IK9 out of the blue. IK9 is a dog training service that prepares service dogs for police, other official contractors,
that's scary.
With that pretty slim market,
okay, we'll do that in a minute, okay? That'll be in a couple videos away, okay?
Lack of funds, but as soon as Jeffrey Earnhardt skipped town, they were good and made their payment. What had happened was Jeffrey had signed with JGR and XCI to run races for them in the top two divisions.
Jeffrey Earnhardt
promised that he'd be promoted to a full-time Cup ride in 2020. But when Christopher Bell's name started getting slung around for that, Jeffrey backed out and dropped all of his sponsorship.
We'll do that in a minute, okay, John? We'll do that in a bit.
Now with no driver, XCI and IK9 understandably halted their plans. JGR
I've delete a couple things, but yeah.
Had been done. XCI ceased its Cup program after just one start at Talladega just a few months prior, and IK9 massively scaled down its sponsorship obligations for 2020. But this time a driver, not a sponsor, had torpedoed an organization, a reversal of the usual course of events. But while we're on the topic, let's explore some of the worst sponsors, team owners, and track promoters in NASCAR history.
Okay, we'll do that in a minute, okay, John? After we hook the Xbox 360.
This video is sponsored by Rage Shadow.
I just got the Xbox back up. So yeah, it'll be a bit.
No, but for real, this video is supported by NordVPN and viewers like you via Patreon. Thank you guys so much.
I like Slash. He's funny.
Sponsorships are the lifeblood of NASCAR. Without them, we wouldn't be able to fund the big advancements we've made in the sport. What? We'd still be stuck on dirt, and racing would look like this.
No, it won't. We're gonna play a game, John. I have a game, okay? We're gonna play a game. We're gonna build a NASCAR like a game NASCAR, okay? We're gonna build a car in a game. We're gonna build a NASCAR in a game, John. technically, according to U.S. law, you can actually, according to NASCAR laws, you can actually start your own NASCAR team for no reason. You can actually start your own NASCAR team. As long as you pass tech inspection and some other things, you can legally be a NASCAR driver if you want to. I'm kidding, John. Literally, according to some rules I found out, all you have to do is just pass tech. You can get a car. If you pass tech inspection and you do all this other stuff, you can legally race a NASCAR with no sponsor. Legally, you can legally race a car. I mean, now the Next Cup, you can race the Willie Series, the Truck Series, the Nextel Series. I mean, the Xfinity Series. You can do it, John. It's not that, John. It's not like the NFL. The NFL is more confusing. I'll put in a video about how to do it, okay? After this, put in a video about how you can legally drive one. No problem.
Anyway, the point is we're able to put on races across the country and hurtle around in state-of-the-art facilities at ridiculous speeds because big companies want to get their name out there.
I'll tell you in a minute.
Space on a mean-looking V8 monster is pretty tempting real estate. But in everyone's haste to sell off body panels and naming rights to the highest bidder, sometimes ne'er-do-wells through the cracks trying to get clout or just some free advertising. Sponsorships are built on trust, and unfortunately, some people come along and abuse that trust for their own ends. And then more often than not, just bafflingly drop off the face of the earth shortly after they've been caught. Mark Martin almost had his entire career nixed in his rookie season after Apache Stove agreed to sponsor him full-time in 1982, and then
legally NASCAR, John. Build one.
You might think that a wood-burning stove company stepping up and spending tens of thousands of dollars to sponsor a NASCAR Cup Series team was odd, but they had sponsored Terry Labonte in his rookie campaign just 3 years prior. Mark, an owner-driver in a partnership with Bud Reeder, took the deal and then, once the checks bounced, scrambled to find funding, taking money from anyone who wanted some cheap advertising. Midway through the season, Mark had everyone he knew begging him to drop out of the series and cut his losses. His debts were mounting and he was going to end up broke, but Mark stubbornly continued on. If he could just win the Rookie of the Year award, then the cash prize at the end of the year would pay for everything, and he'd be good.
Wow.
However, after a late-season collapse, failing to finish 5 of the last 8 races, Jeff Bodine pulled away and ended up with the check and the ticket to the year-end banquet at the Waldorf Astoria. Now severely in debt and with no other sponsors knocking on the door, Mark sold off his share of the team and started over from scratch. In 1983, he signed with Jim Stacy and drove for him for the first 7 races of the season, before parting ways with him, too. Why? Well, Jim Stacy wasn't paying him either. Mark Martin quit his dreams of being a NASCAR star after the 1984 season and dropped back to the Midwestern-centered ASA series. But, as we all know, he'd be back in a big way once the 90s rolled around. So let's talk about Jim J.D. Stacy. By 1983, the California real estate mogul had become quite notorious for just not paying people he worked with. In 1981, he had bought Rod Osterland's number 2 team with star driver and defending champion Dale Earnhardt. However, Dale was the first to get bit by JD's nefarious ways and defected over to Richard Childress Racing after that. You probably know how well that turned out for him. After that, JD went to a 2-car operation and proceeded to have a revolving door of drivers big and small come through his shop. Jim Sauter, Joe Ruttman, Morgan Shepherd, Tim Richmond, and many others. Some got paid, some didn't. Okay, so he was a reckless car owner, big whoop, right? Well, that wasn't the only way he managed to screw people over. He had a penchant, almost an addiction, to sponsoring as many cars as he could in any given race. He just loved seeing his name plastered everywhere. To be fair, I mean, who doesn't, though?
Trump,
right?
Tower.
In 1982 Daytona 500, he sponsored no less than 7 entries, and sometimes he would bring that count as high as 8. But as the season dragged on, he became more and more spotty with his payments, and eventually found himself in legal trouble. As it turned out, the real estate market over in California was imploding, and he was losing money fast.
Wow.
Honest team owners like Harry Ranier, Junie Donlevy, and Billy Hagan, who had been fixtures in the sport for over a decade, found themselves struggling to meet their basic payments after JD's checks bounced. And they'd struggle for the rest of the decade and eventually bow out by the time the 90s rolled around. Everywhere he went, J.D. Stacy seemed to kill everything he touched. He sold his team before the 1984 season kicked off and dipped out of the sport entirely, almost as suddenly as he'd come in. While a bad sponsorship deal can kill a career in the cradle, it can also send a legendary driver into retirement well before his time. Darrell Waltrip had unknowingly won his final race of his career at the Southern 500 in 1992 and struggled to keep pace with the field as an owner-driver throughout the 90s. At the end of the 1997 season, his longtime sponsor, Western Auto, had backed out, and he was looking for a new one to foot the bill. Speedblock, a brand of fast-setting concrete, stepped up, and DW quickly agreed to their terms in a handshake deal. He made the first 5 races of 1998 sporting their colors, but then he found out that it's always better to have a multi-million-dollar sponsorship deal in writing. Speedblock never sent him a single check. Now in 6-figure debt and his best years behind him, Darrell sold his beloved team and all of his assets to Tyler Beverly, who merge it with International Sports Management, another team Beverly had bought. But unbeknownst to either of them, they had just inflamed the tensions in the infamous Tabasco fiasco from the previous entry in this series. Eventually, in a cruel twist of fate, Tyler Beverly's new team, Tyler Jet Motorsports, tapped Darrell Waltrip to drive what were essentially his old cars. However, going into the 2000 season, Tyler needed a new driver and a new sponsor. Johnny Benson was selected, and Lycos, an early internet search engine, signed up to sponsor the endeavor.
Like Net Zero.
Was about $5 million in Lycos bucks, which was basically free banner ads on Lycos' website. But how Lycos determined the ad rates was pretty fishy. And as it turned out, they just weren't displaying those ads they promised at all. Tyler Beverly had named his race team Tyler Jet Motorsports because he ran a jet sales company and was hoping the ads would drive more business his way. Tyler eventually sued, but before a settlement could be reached, he sold off the team to MP2 Motorsports, who were more interested in racing than selling commercial aircraft. And they actually got Johnny Benson his very first career win.
Oh, I remember that.
The debacle ended up being the very first nail in the coffin for Tyler Beverly, as he was brought under investigation for money laundering in 2004. In actuality, Tyler had never gotten enough money from Lycos to fund the race team, and was actually laundering money from his jet sales company to finance the whole operation.
TNT.
Sent to prison, got out, and then got bopped again in 2017 for tax evasion. Once a grifter, always a grifter, I guess.
Damn.
All right, so shady sponsors are bad for teams, no surprise there. But what about sponsors that are great for teams but screw over their customers? Let's talk a minute about Advocare. Advocare is a multi-level marketing company that primarily sold nutritional supplements.
What's up with that?
Multi-level
My
marketing
company's not-
means that somebody at the top sells the products to people down the line. Then in turn, those people sell more stuff to people lower in the line, and a portion of all of the money from successive sales is funneled upwards towards the top. So people at the top profit more than the people down on the lower rungs. Well, that sounds a bit like a pyramid scheme, but for legal reasons, I can't actually call these companies pyramid schemes. However, I mean, just take a look at their business model. What do you call a business model with this shape?
A pyramid?
Advocare had sponsored a few race teams, NCAA basketball, and had even gotten an endorsement from Drew Brees, who touted it as a great opportunity for people to earn additional income. However, the Federal Trade Commission thought that Advocare was just a little bit too close to a pyramid scheme for their tastes. And they fined them for $150 million.
Damn.
To completely revamp their business from the ground up. The thing that had really gotten them in hot water was when they went around selling their service as being able to generate, quote, unlimited income. Considering that the money that currently exists on planet Earth right now is finite, that's one hell of a thing to say, and they paid dearly for it. To my knowledge, they haven't sponsored anyone in NASCAR since. With all of these sketchy sponsors floating around, you might be wondering why nobody is around sounding the alarm on these jerks before they actually do the damage. But NASCAR and the NASCAR Media Corps actually have a sort of gentleman's agreement to keep their hands off of sponsors, so as to not scare off any of the good actors. To be fair, it would only be a matter of time until somebody jumped the gun and said something about a company that just wasn't true. Which is why everybody was so tight-lipped about the IK9 situation while it was developing. So let's talk about the NASCAR Media Corps. Back in the days when old media was king and the only game in town, the Media Corps used to consist of hundreds of beat reporters traveling across the country with NASCAR who worked for a variety of publications ranging from NASCAR Scene to the New York Times. Nowadays, though, with new media taking the spotlight, the Corps has shrunk to just a few dozen or so. And with accurate information at a premium, a journalist's reputation and trust is everything. If even one reporter goofs, then they threaten the legitimacy of all the others. So they have a tendency to jettison reporters from who don't mind their P's and Q's. Professionalism is everything in these circles. But with new media crowding out the old way, some new players inevitably come on the scene and threaten the trustworthiness of the whole operation. And that gets us to the 2020 Las Vegas media meltdown. After the season opener at Daytona had been delayed until Monday night, teams and media alike were exhausted when they rolled into Las Vegas on the other side of the country just 4 days later. A new player in the market, Motor Racing Insider, has sent an envoy of theirs to do social media for them on location, fellow YouTuber Joseph Lombard, who signed on with them in late 2019. However, when Joseph was just starting to get settled into his new gig on Saturday, his phone started blowing up. Someone had looked into Motor Racing Insider and discovered that the articles on their site were plagiarized. And I don't just mean one or two of them, but all of them. And it wasn't like they had just stolen a few paragraphs here and there either. They had straight up copy-pasted the entire articles. Everything on their site was ripped off from other news sources. Joseph was their social media guy, not a writer. But since he was their only representative at the track, he took the heat nonetheless. Reporters and Twitter users alike hammered him online. But after it was revealed that he himself
but hey, they got some tools.
They backed off. Head of MRI took to Twitter to calm everybody down, saying that they were just an aggregator site and a news site. But aggregators post links to articles. They don't just copy-paste the whole thing and leave a link down at the bottom in the small print. Plus, there was a parody account going around making things way worse. Joseph, who was understandably furious, tried to contact his boss, but found he had changed his name on Facebook and was being very dodgy all around, deflecting any blame sent his way. MRI went dark shortly thereafter. Now, some people have tried to blame Joseph Lombard for this, saying that he should have looked into his employer more, but I disagree. It is perfectly reasonable to assume that your employer isn't, breaking the frickin' law. It's not your job as an employee to sniff out the inner workings of the business you work for to make sure everything's on the up and up. I mean, nobody's ever taken a job at FedEx and said, yeah, the job's great, but before I sign on the dotted line, can I inspect a few of the packages to make sure you guys aren't knowingly transporting illegal drugs? Oh shit, that one actually happened. Okay, so maybe you should just assume that
it did happen, but now with FedEx was some other company. It wasn't UPS, it was DMP or something, DLP or something like that.
During a rain delay on Saturday for the Xfinity race, rumors began circulating among NASCAR Media Corps members that some other YouTuber with media credentials was going around the garage acting very unprofessional. Well, that just won't do. With these new media personalities often being the gateway for newer fans entering the sport, unprofessionalism affects everyone down the line. Speculation is that it was Darian Gilliam, aka Black Flags Matter, going around the garage trying to get NASCAR drivers to rub a little Buddha statue of his for good luck. Very unprofessional, Darian. I don't know, that seems pretty innocuous to me. Then again, I've been in this YouTube scene for more than a decade, and unless somebody's abusing their kids or faking their own death for views, I consider it a pretty slow news day, to be honest with you. I give Darian a pass on this one. But that wasn't the last of the chicanery from Las Vegas that weekend. After the main event in the media center, somebody asked a very unprofessional question of the race winner, Joey Logano. What was this question? No one knew at the time. All the Media Corps members won't say anything on Twitter. Everyone's being super professional and tight-lipped about it. However, Jim Utter speculates that it might have been a Barstool Sports stunt. Jeff Gluck thinks that it might have been a YouTube thing. Both of them tweet this without any evidence backing this up. Well, that sounds kind of just unprofessional, guys. When Utter is called out on it, well, he doesn't seem to care. An odd thing to say for somebody who says they care about professionalism so much. Barstool Sports is an organization that's pretty new to the whole Media Corps thing. And they're in a unique position because they don't have any respect amongst their peers and don't seem to be interested in getting it either. They are self-admittedly an outlet ran for and by frat bro types that love college sports. David Portnoy, the president of Barstool Sports, has a penchant for calling people out on their BS, leading harassment campaigns, and in general just...
Yeah, we'll do something else, guys.
So Portnoy was quick to have a few of his guys remind the Twitterverse about how unprofessional Jim Utter is. And as it turns out, he had a habit of towing any car that parked in his designated parking spot. One time he even had NASCAR driver Michael McDowell towed. Why did the other media members not call Utter out on this? Well, it was to maintain appearances. But Barstool just doesn't give a shit and they outed him. David Portnoy, as he so often does, led a harassment campaign against Jim Utter, and honestly, they took it too far. I mean, it was kind of funny, though. As it turned out, this whole fiasco wasn't a YouTube or a Barstool stunt. A guy by the name of Mark Anthony DeBello had somehow finagled media credentials, despite the fact that on his application papers he stated that he wrote for his own media company, and only has 129 subs on YouTube and no real social media presence whatsoever.
130 subs?
So what was this horrifically...
I have more than you do, you imbecile.
Long-term question.
There, guys, we'll do something else.
Talk out there about a 10-year plan NASCAR, NASCAR November. Charlotte for the Hall of Fame, here because it's obviously the gambling capital, and congratulations, you were 5-1.
We're not doing NASCAR right now, guys. We'll do something else later.
Final race, a week championship series in Daytona, with the cool part being that the championship, the Cup winner, gets to be the pole sitter for the race in February, Daytona 500. Your thoughts about that in the long term?
That's it. That's the whole question. Jesus, guys, that wasn't so bad now, was it? I don't understand why this was such a big deal anyway, or why the esteemed Media Corps freaked out about it and wondered who it was. I mean, he had done the same thing last year to the same driver at the same race. Did nobody catch that? That's all news to me. Only that time back in 2019, he asked, would NASCAR move to a 4-stage format instead of the current 3 stages? Which, as it turned out, that was an idea they had been floating around amongst themselves. The fans of
stages in NASCAR.
Don't be too surprised if what he says actually comes to pass. The lesson here, folks, check your sources, stay humble, and don't park in Jim Utter's parking spot. I mean, it's not like I have to worry about that last one. I mean, I live all the way out in South Carolina. There's no way he could possibly... Wait, what's that noise? Oh, shit. Hey, it's my car! Stop! That's my car!
You live in the middle of nowhere. The thing about him is, he lives in the same town that Mr. Beast lives in. And I actually like to meet him one time. Like to. Yeah.
How did Jim Utter find out where I lived and my license plate number? You know what? It must have been that time I hooked up to the free Wi-Fi at Daytona International Speedway earlier this year. Jim must have used that to track me down. If only there was some sort of virtual private network I could have used to
he's
protect
joking,
myself.
okay?
Well, luckily, thanks to our newest supporter, NordVPN, you can do just that. With the lockdown still ongoing and people spending more
Oh
time
my
on
God,
their
my name
phones,
is on there.
it's important
The
to keep
HM
yourself
Mishko
protected from
Company.
various
Thank you to HM Mishko
And
Company
luckily, NordVPN
for
is
supporting
fair
us on
enough. You can
Patreon.
use the affiliate
Yep,
link
we
down
sponsored
below
them.
or use coupon
Now-
code SLAPShoes, spelled straight up with no numbers, all lowercase. You can get 70%
Uh-huh.
off NordVPN.
Right.
Only $3.49 a month, plus you get an additional month free.
Okay, cut this
So don't
off.
gamble like
We're
I did.
doing that. We'll do that later. Right now, we're gonna get some stuff around here. Watch one more of his videos, and then we're going to do some GTA maybe live. Or no, I'm not sure yet. But today is gonna be technically quarantine. I found out you can actually buy your own NASCAR, guys. Actually, according to what my colleague Slab said, you can actually buy your own car if you want to, and no one can stop you. You can actually make your own NASCAR
On the
team.
dotted line, can I inspect a few of the packages to make sure you guys aren't knowingly transporting illegal drugs? Oh shit, that would actually happen. Okay, so maybe you should just assume that your employers are all thieving bastards.
So we're gonna watch
because
this real
let's
quick,
face it, they
guys, then we're gonna
probably
get
are.
off this.
But that's not all from the Las Vegas media.
We're gonna watch Slab. We're gonna watch one more video, and that's
Saturday
it.
For the Xfinity race, rumors began circulating among NASCAR media.
Because there is a video saying that you can actually start your own team, no problem. One video he talked about you can actually start your own race with no problem. I get what he called it, but yeah. I think this is the video. Not really sure, guys. No, according to law, theoretically speaking, you can start your own NASCAR team. I hate this team.
Let's see what's inside.
This was on last week. This is actually true. You can start your own NASCAR team, no problem. Oh, wait.
Over time, I've noticed that a good chunk of my subscribers have either never watched a NASCAR race or have just started getting into the sport.
Wrong video.
With quarantine finally being partially lifted this week, and NASCAR being the first American sport to resume.
Okay, here we go. This is the video.
Talladega Super Speedway has been shrouded in controversy.
It's about
for longer
Talladega.
than most race fans today have been alive. You may think this all started.
Okay,
Talladega
guys.
Super Speedway has been shrouded
This is something we need to listen to on the
controversy for
GTA.
longer than most race fans today have been alive. You may think this all started in the late 80s with the introduction of the restrictor plate and the advent of pack racing, which led to the inevitable Big One accidents, making drivers and owners alike livid to no end. Some say it goes back even further, to the 1800s, when the Native Americans who lived in this place were pushed out by the U.S. Army during the Trail of Tears, and the natives cursed this land as they left. Centuries-old stories notwithstanding, the most well-documented story behind Talladega's troubled past goes back to the very first race in September of 1969. What ensues is a tale of Baptists and the United States Department of Defense, of boycotts and opportunities lost, of tire wars and tire failures, of greed and deceit, of workers' rights and of union busting. This was the very first race ever at Talladega Super Speedway, and it was the
NASCAR is
worst race
non-union.
in NASCAR history.
Let's watch this, guys. We'll start some GTA.
I thought Daytona was big, but then you look at that track, it looks like you fit Daytona inside. It's pretty horrifying. It's like the guy's been out there running on something like that. We ain't gonna do this. Our neck's out there on the road. This car's gonna be in the race. You're gonna drive with somebody else with. Let's face it, I won the race, no doubt about it. And when he said that to me, he was stepped behind me, punched him in the face, and knocked him back.
It's like the worst NASCAR. So, theoretically speaking, you pass tech inspection, you can race a NASCAR. No problem. Whoa. That's it, guys. In a little bit, we'll play some GTA 5 Live. GTA Net. Or really something else, I don't know yet.
this story, we're going to have to go back, like way back, like all the way to the beginning. This is Talladega Superspeedway, circa 1949. At this point, it isn't a speedway at all. This is Anniston Air Force Base in the small town of Anniston in Talladega County, Alabama. Originally opened in 1942 as a training school for the United States Army Air Corps during World War II, the post-war years for Anniston Air Base have not been good. The 1960s roll around, the airfields have fallen into disrepair, but the U.S. Army still needs it because the Vietnam War is gearing up and they need to run ammo from the Anniston Army Depot out to the West Coast. However, the city of Anniston and Talladega County can't afford it. They don't have the money, they don't have the manpower. Enter Big Bill France Sr., current president of the city of Nascar, who is looking to build the biggest, baddest track in the world in South Carolina. There are a few stories surrounding the original idea of the biggest, baddest speedway being built. Some say it's supposed to be built in Raleigh. Other people say somewhere in South Georgia. But to me, this one makes the most sense, and it is the one that has been the most popular of the years. Big Bill France wants to build a new track in a big market. He wants it to be even bigger and better than Daytona. So he makes the turns just a little bit steeper, the track just a little bit wider, and the length just a little bit longer. His target, halfway between the existing tracks of Charlotte Motor Speedway and Atlanta Raceway. Greenville, South Carolina is the perfect spot.
Greenville.
Dead center in the middle. Just one hiccup with this master plan.
It's
South
a blue belt.
Carolina has blue laws on the books at this time.
Still
if you
today.
don't know what a blue law is, then good for you. You
Yep.
live in a sensible part of the country. Blue laws are essentially laws passed in heavily Baptist areas that pertain to what kind of
Not really.
activities
Indiana has
you
it
do
too.
and not do during the Sabbath. And for Baptists, that is every Sunday of the year. Some of these blue laws are actually still in the books today. Like in some counties in South Carolina, you can't buy beer on Sunday. And to this
Technically, you still can't buy beer in Indiana on Sunday either. It's been like that since you can't. And same thing with Indiana. You can't buy beer on Sundays anymore in Indiana. It's been like that since the Prohibition era. Even when Prohibition ended, you still can't buy beer on Sundays. Still can't buy beer on Sunday. And this one one time I went to this. One time I was at the local one of the stores here in town. This lady saying, "What's wrong?" I don't know. I can't. I wish I could buy it, but I can't. What? I can't buy beer. You can buy beer. It's Sunday. What state you live in? Indiana? Well, you can buy beer in this state. There's no against the law. Is it? Michigan? No, not in Michigan. The rule is you can't buy beer. We have one rule here in Michigan. You can't buy alcohol before 7 a.m. on Sundays. That's the only rule. Really? It's after 7 o'clock you can buy beer? Really? The state law says you can't buy beer on Sundays until after 7 a.m. It's after 7 a.m. It's after 7 a.m. You can buy alcohol. And she's thinking, you're nuts. Don't believe me. Ask the shop owner. Ask the owner. And he said, yep, Tyler's right. You can buy beer right now. I can? Yeah. And this lady's thinking, wow. Which one? And he asked, she's a Hoosier. Oh. Down south? Yep. He said, oh, makes sense. You can buy, yeah. And she's thinking, oh, wow. She's like going, I cannot believe she did not know that. She's looking at it, but she thought, oh, I can't buy it. In Michigan, you can buy beer after 7 a.m. on Sunday. On Sundays, you can buy beer after 7 a.m. That's state law. Okay, you can't buy beer between the time you can't buy beer in Michigan between midnight and 7 a.m. on Sundays. You cannot buy beer. You can't buy it. You can buy beer right after 7 a.m. You can buy beer. And this lady was going crazy. This lady was nuts because she didn't know. But after this, guys, we're doing some GTA. Now, this is about NASCAR, how you can own a team. So,
every liquor store in South Carolina is closed on Sundays.
Same with Indiana.
Back in the 1960s, they were a lot more all-encompassing. In some places, you couldn't open any kind of business on Sunday. And in most places, you couldn't hold a social or a sporting event on Sunday back then. And that was a statewide law, not just limited to counties. Bill France tries to petition the state legislature to change these laws, but to no avail. They're not budging. If you're wondering then how the Southern 500 at Darlington Raceway ever became a thing, well, that was because back in the day, they used to run the 500 not on the weekend of Labor Day, but on Labor Day itself, a Monday. So Big Bill France packs up his stuff and he goes out to look elsewhere. Yep, South Carolina misses out on the biggest, baddest speedway on the planet being built in their state because of damned Baptists. I could have had the craziest speedway in America built in my backyard, but nope, that didn't happen thanks to these jerks. Yet another reason to hate the Baptist church. It just, God, it is.
It's another reason I don't go. No offense, I don't go to church because of that.
So
I don't go to church that much
because of that. Well, he needs his track to be near some major markets, southern cities with big populations.
Or
he
a
also
highway.
needs a track to be near an interstate, like within 10 miles. A scout of his comes through for him. Midway between Atlanta and Birmingham, Interstate 20 is being built, and right next to it, Anniston Air Force Base, with all that nice, flat ground right around it. Big Bill agrees with the Department of Defense to pave new runways so long as he can have the old ones. They agree, and the city of Anniston sells the land to Big Bill France on very favorable terms. Everyone wins. Big Bill France gets his land, Anniston doesn't have to worry about that old run-down tarmac, and the Army can still run ammo out of the depot. Seems just a little too perfect, doesn't it? Bill France hires the same contractors who built I-20 to build his track. Construction has very few hang-ups and gets completed on time, but by design, the completion date runs up dangerously close to opening weekend. The executive suites for VIPs and corporate sponsors, those are just open-air rooms with tables made from pieces of plywood over sawhorses. The patrons of those suites have to wear earplugs on opening weekend. Invitational testing runs, forget about it. The first tests are done on Wednesday, week of show, just 5 days before race day. All the drivers pour into the track that Wednesday, and they're impressed. Talladega is only 0.16 miles longer than Daytona and 12 feet wider, but it feels way more massive than that. They're in shock but excited. They can't wait to race. However, the first guys out on the track report some handling problems. Okay, fine, no biggie. They're using Daytona setups, and this track's a little bit different, so they just need to make some adjustments. They come back to the garage after just a few laps at full speed, and this is what their tires look like.
Dang!
They're shredded. The
middle of it's missing.
track might as well have been paved with cheese graters. Other drivers report the same problem. No matter the car, no matter the tire manufacturer, they all have the same issue: bad tires. Now, at that time, NASCAR was in the midst of a full-blown tire war between Goodyear and Firestone. Chances are, if you're a NASCAR fan watching this video, you can't remember the last tire war in NASCAR, don't even know what I'm talking about. A tire war is a horrible thing for any sanctioning body to go through, and I'm not even sure why they let them happen in the first place. Basically, the sanctioning body, in this case NASCAR, decides they don't like how much money their tire manufacturer is putting up to be exclusive manufacturer in the sport. So NASCAR goes shopping and finds Firestone, who put up a considerable sum to compete against Goodyear and NASCAR. NASCAR teams sign contracts with different tire makers, so you have Goodyear teams versus Firestone teams, and that sounds good, right? Competition is great, right? Well, not in this instance. The free market can fix most things, but this is not one of them. In order to get an edge over the competition, the manufacturers run up against the razor's edge of safety. A softer tire is more grippy and therefore faster but lacks durability and falls apart faster. A harder tire lacks grip and speed but lasts longer and is safer. A tire failure is one of the worst accidents a NASCAR driver can have, and they typically look like this: pretty much head-on impacts with the walls at harsh angles. Plenty of drivers up to this point have died in accidents that look a lot like this, and injuries are commonplace in NASCAR in 1969. Nobody wants this, but when winning is on the line against safety, typically winning takes priority. That's just how people are. The last tire war in NASCAR was in the early 90s with Goodyear versus Hoosier. And tire failures were rampant in those years and led to many driver injuries and hospitalizations. Eventually, NASCAR learned its lesson, and there has not been another tire war since. But this is 1969, and those lessons are being learned in the heat of the moment, here and now, at opening weekend of the first race at the biggest, baddest speedway on the planet. The two tire makers fly in harder compounds overnight from their various warehouses across the country. Thursday comes around and there's still no progress. The tires aren't getting any better. They're still getting shredded to ribbons. Finally, Friday morning comes around and the drivers have had it. Neither manufacturer can come up with a tire that can handle the stress of 2-ton stock car bodies traveling at 190 miles per hour in the 33-degree banks. And that day, Firestone backs out. No driver will get injured or die on their tires. They cancel their contracts and allow teams to run whatever tire they want. Goodyear, however, stands firm. If they can weather this storm, they will win the tire war and be the undisputed tire maker for NASCAR for years to come. They figure the hit and PR from potential accidents is worth it to be the top dog in NASCAR's top series. As the day goes on, the Goodyear tires aren't faring any better in wear than the Firestones, and soon the drivers start looking to the newly formed Professional Drivers Association to help them out. Formed just mere weeks before the events of this race, the Professional Drivers Association, or PDA for short, is a cooperative of drivers who want a cut of broadcasting rights money, a pension program, and healthcare benefits. Now that sounds a bit like a union, but it's totally not. The PDA makes sure of this, as they never call themselves a union at any point. Besides, they're not a union at all anyway. A normal union of professional athletes like the NFL Players Association or the NFLPA uses collective bargaining to fight for things like salary increases, healthcare benefits, pension programs, and organized strikes.
What the PDA did was
The PDA, on the other hand, vows to fight for salary increases, healthcare benefits, pension programs, and organized strikes if need be. Okay. It might be a union, but still the PDA never refers to itself as such.
PDA for safety.
One, union culture is pretty much unheard of in the South at this time, and even if the drivers were on board with unionization, there's no guarantee that NASCAR fans would have supported them. And second, NASCAR is very harsh on drivers who talk openly of unionization. The PDA isn't even the first attempt at NASCAR unionization. In 1961, NASCAR's two most popular drivers, Curtis Turner and Tim Flock, worked with the Teamsters to get NASCAR's first union off the ground, the Federation of Professional Athletes. Big Bill France responds by vowing that any member of the FPA will not be allowed to race in NASCAR. Curtis Turner quickly loses support, but he holds out for as long as he thinks he can. Eventually, Big Bill France uses the nuclear option, as he said he would, and he bans Curtis Turner from the sport for life. This is not a punitive measure. This is to send a message. There will be no talk of unionization in NASCAR, no matter who it is. Big Bill France bans his most popular driver at the height of his career just to make a point. There will be no union in NASCAR, ever. So why does NASCAR have this seek and destroy policy when it comes to unions? Well, it has everything to do with how a union works, leverage. Let's take a look at how a normal player strike would usually work in most sports sanctioning bodies. Typically, you have the sanctioning body, let's say the NFL in this case, aligned with team owners. The NFL sets salary caps and determines who can and cannot own an NFL team. If you own a team, let's just say, for instance, the Buffalo Bills, and try to sell them, you can't just sell them to any random yahoo off the street who throws enough money at you. The NFL has to approve the new owner. There are only so many teams allowed to compete in the NFL, and the NFL decides who gets to own what team and where that team is located. Even if you own that team, you can't move it to a different city without the NFL giving you the green light. The NFL and the team owners are, for all intents and purposes, basically one and the same. On the other side, you have the players who were unionization in NASCAR, no matter who it is. Big Bill France bans his most popular driver at the height of his career just to make a point. There will be no union in NASCAR.
Good, guys.
So why does NASCAR have this seek and destroy policy when it comes to unions? Well, it has everything to do with how union.
Okay, I told John to go to 11 minutes. I'll send John this video. So let's get to 11 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna put this back on, guys. So 11 minutes.
Works. Leverage. Let's take a look at how a normal player strike would usually work in most sports sanctioning bodies. Typically, you have the sanctioning body, let's say the NFL in this case, aligned with team owners. The NFL sets salary caps and determines who can and cannot own an NFL team. If you own a team, let's just say, for instance, the Buffalo Bills, and try to sell them, you can't just sell them to any random yahoo off the street who throws enough money at you. The NFL has to approve the new owner. There are only so many teams allowed to compete in the NFL, and the NFL decides who gets to own what team and where that team is located. Even if you own that team, you can't move it to a different city without the NFL giving you the green light. The NFL and the team owners are, for all intents and purposes, basically one and the same. On the other side, you have the players who work for the teams basically as contractors rendering their services. If the players don't like their salary or benefits packages, they can collectively get together in a union and threaten a strike to leverage the owners in the NFL to give them what they want. If that doesn't work, then the NFL and its owners can just hire a whole bunch of replacements to play the game if they don't want to budge. NASCAR, on the other hand, is completely different. In 1969, most drivers are owner drivers, which is exactly what it sounds like. Not only does the guy drive the car he owns, but he also owns the team as well. He decides which of his crew to hire and fire, nails down sponsorship deals, and what races he wants to run. It would be like if Tom Brady was not only the quarterback for the New England Patriots, but was also the team owner and the GM and got to pick who his coach would be. The board is totally lopsided. The players and the owners are now one and the same. And NASCAR teams can come and go as they please. Right now, today, if you own enough money, you can go start a NASCAR team and run races. So long as your cars pass tech inspection and post a qualifying time fast enough to get into the show, NASCAR basically just has to let you compete. And NASCAR can't hire replacements either. A NASCAR stock car is a proprietary car. It can't run anywhere else. It is purpose-built to run according to a NASCAR rules package only. You can't just go buy one off the street and have some yahoo drive it. However, in 1969, the PDA is allowed to coalesce because NASCAR has way more eyes on it. They have a much bigger fan base than they did earlier in the decade, and as a direct result, they have bigger stars too. And literally every single star driver is part of the PDA. David Pearson, the Allison brothers, Cale Yarborough, and basically every driver worth talking about, save for Bobby Isaac, who is a bit of a loner who has a record of flying his own colors. And who might the president be of the PDA? Well, none other than the king himself, Richard Petty. France can't bring himself to do anything about the PDA because they got way too many cards in their hand too quickly. They got the drop on him, and he can't do anything. So he does exactly that. Nothing. He never acknowledges that the PDA even exists. Journalists ask him about the association and he feigns ignorance, just like it's some fairy tale. If he can't punish the drivers in the PDA, then he'll just act like it doesn't exist to eat away at their credibility. However, the PDA is just as ill-prepared as Goodyear and Firestone to deal with this situation. They hold all the cards, but they don't know how to play them. So the drivers take matters into their own hands. They approach Big Bill France and voice their concerns. It's not about pay or benefits, it's about safety and safety only. They want to postpone the race until a tire compound can be made that
Right back. So, guys, that's what the PDA was. Just safety, just like a safety union. One drink. Okay, guys, we're gonna finish this up, and someone else came up. So yeah, technically, you can start your NASCAR race no problem.
withstand the brutal loads at Talladega. Bill France says no way. They have to race on the original date. He won't admit it to the drivers, but he's in debt up to his eyeballs from having to build this place. Those bare-bones suites we talked about earlier, Bill France doesn't even have the money to complete those. They were built at cost by the contractor on the agreement that the contractor could make a suite for himself, a suite that he still owns to this day, except it's a lot nicer these days, of course. The race has to go off on race day because a postponement means not making his money back as soon as possible.
Either way, I mean,
which
his
is
family
why the
members.
completion date
I
ranks
think
so close up to
even if
race
the
day in the
contractor owns
first
it, I
place.
think his
He
family
has
could
to have
use it
his
still.
money back now. Big Bill France isn't budging, but neither are the drivers. Little cliques start getting formed all over the garage. They're trying to discuss amongst themselves what they think they should do. Do they stay and hope Goodyear can bring in good tires, or do they continue with the protests and say they're not going to run? Some drivers even talk openly about a potential walkout. Bill France tries to ease tensions by buying an old race car and taking it out for a few laps, just to show that there's nothing wrong with the track. Instead of easing everybody's tensions, he only makes things worse. Drivers point out that he was only puttering around at about 160 miles an hour, well short of what they were doing out there. Bill says, well, why don't you guys just race at that speed then? But that's just a slap in the face to say something like that to a racer. It's an affront to everything racing stands for. Even if they tried that out there, somebody would push the envelope and somebody else would respond, and they'd all wind up racing at 190 miles an hour anyway. At some point during these group powwows on Friday, Bill France is talking it out with Bobby Allison and Leroy Yarborough. When Big Bill France says to Bobby Allison, 15-time winner in the NASCAR Grand National Division at this point, and the winner of the last race just a week prior, quote, I think you're just afraid to race. At this point, according to Bobby Allison, to this day, he says that Leroy Yarborough stepped out from behind him and swung and hit Bill France in the face, putting him on the ground. Leroy then turns around and says to his group, boys, pack up your stuff, we're leaving. That was the trigger the PDA needed. All at once, every single PDA driver packs up their stuff and leaves Talladega Superspeedway. They will not die for Big Bill France's big, dumb, stupid track. There are only 3 holdouts. 1, the aforementioned Bobby Isaac, who sees an opportunity to make a run at the championship points lead now that all of his competition is left. 2, a non-PDA driver named Jim Vandiver driving for a team owned by Ray Fox. And 3, a PDA driver turned scab who will race anyway. His name is Richard Brickhouse. He races for the The same team as Bobby Isaac, a factory-owned team financed by the Chrysler Corporation. And Chrysler Corp wants to debut their brand new car, the Dodge Charger Daytona, a car supposedly capable of speeds exceeding 200 miles an hour. But this week, that won't happen.
Plymouth
The
Superbird.
tires just won't allow it. Next year, it will dominate the schedule and win the championship. In 1971, NASCAR will ban its use entirely. But here in 1969, Chrysler just wants someone to drive their car for their flagship team. The car owner of the number 99 Dodge approaches Richard as soon as the walkout happens and tells him, if you don't drive this car on Sunday, somebody else will. Thus, that is his reason for turning scab and not participating in the walkout. Honestly, if you were in his shoes, you'd find it hard to say no too. You have a chance to win your first race and show off in this brand new Dodge Daytona. It's an opportunity that only comes once in a young racer's career, and that's if you're extremely
Now, have you ever
lucky.
seen the movie
Richard
Cars,
knows
The
this
King?
and
That's
vows
what it
to race
is.
on Sunday.
That's what it is,
Had
guys.
NASCAR
Car
been,
big ol'
say,
wing.
a Midwestern or Northeastern sport instead of a Southern sport, somewhere where union culture existed, then there wouldn't have just
Up
been
here.
a walkout. There would have been a picket line and appeals to the fans to boycott the race. But this is Alabama in the 1960s, and organizing something like that is all but unheard of. The drivers in the PDA never try to picket. As a matter of fact, the topic is never even brought up. The drivers never even think to make a picket line. They just pack up and head home. NASCAR fans aren't too sure what to make of it. So Big Bill France makes sure to tell them what to think about it. He offers up an unbeatable deal. If you buy a ticket to the Talladega 500, then you can use that stub to get in the Daytona 500 next year. The fans jump on it. They come in droves to watch the shit show in Talladega County in September and get free tickets to Daytona in February to boot. But what about the race itself? You can't just put 3 cars on a 2.66 mile speedway for 500 miles, right? You're exactly right, Bill France says to himself. So he goes and raids the field from the 400-mile preliminary race on
Xfinity
Saturday,
Series.
a race from a completely different series. They race sports cars in that division, not stock cars. Instead of Chevelles, Torinos, and Roadrunners, they race Camaros, Mustangs, and even one AMC Javelin. They can barely do 160 with the wind at their backs, let alone pass tech inspection. So what does France do? He just changes the rules. That's it. He just does it like it's totally normal. Just declares all the cars legal, and that's that. So there it is. 3 actually competitive cars being driven by 2 young guys no one's ever heard of, and Bobby Isaac, NASCAR's biggest loner, and a field full of cars well off the pace. The stage is all but set for a disaster to occur, and it does, but not in the way you'd expect. That tire problem we've been talking about, at the last second, that morning before race day, Goodyear flies in some new tires, and they held up surprisingly well. There wasn't a single tire failure that day. And the lower division cars filling in the field, they're running the same tires they ran the day before without a single issue. And I don't mean the same sets, like they had several sets of tires they would change out during the race. No, they pitted for fuel in that division only. These guys ran an entire race for 400 miles on a single set of tires and then turned around and did another 500-mile race the next day with no issues.
Not much. Just goofing off.
Make tires out
watching some old NASCAR footage, just doing this and that.
Race starts,
Waiting for the post to come because I'm waiting for a parcel from ads. I'm waiting for a letter from the post company.
One of those underpowered pony cars ran him down.
Nothing. I have to go to my living room a little bit, wait for the post to come.
Shouts out to Ramos Stott then.
That's what I have to do.
Richard Brickhouse and Jim Vandiver are running
killing time.
1-2 all day long, and according to the radio call, which someone bothered to record, they voiced some confusion in the running order and then announced that Jim Vandiver was the leader.
Jim Vandiver in the lead. Here's Richard Brickhouse getting around Jim Vandiver as he goes around. So that gives him sanitary. He's made up one of those laps, Ned. That should be in the same lap with the leaders, Bob.
That's right, we have a potential scoring error even though there are only 2 competitive cars out there on the track. Later, when the checkered flag flies, NASCAR announces Richard Brickhouse as the winner. Vandiver and his car owner Ray Fox are livid. They contend to this day that they won that race that day.
Not much,
and that
guys.
the scoring error wasn't an accident. I can't confirm this, but it really wouldn't surprise me if it turned out to be true. But the rumor persists that it was Chrysler Corp that sweet-talked Bill France into inventing the scoring error, because they wanted their new model of Dodge to win over Jim Vandiver, who was driving the older model. It probably would have looked bad if the brand new 1970 Dodge Charger Daytona had lost to the old 1969 Dodge Charger. Despite the protest, Richard Brickhouse is declared the winner and Jim Vandiver is placed in second. Richard Brickhouse would enjoy his win about as much as you would imagine, but all 3 of these drivers who did not participate in the walkout would wind up being cursed in some way. Bobby Isaac would go on to win the 1970 championship in the Wings Charger Daytona, but in 1977, he would park his car in the middle of a 200-lap event at Hickory Motor Speedway and collapse. He was resuscitated and taken to the hospital where it seemed as though he had made a full recovery. But later that night, he would die of a heart attack caused by complications from heat exhaustion. Richard Brickhouse and Jim Vandiver would never go on to win another race or even be competitive. As a matter of fact, in the very next race, Richard was spun out by a PDA driver who had walked out of Talladega. And this picture depicting the incident was taken so clearly because a PDA driver had told the photographer where to stand in order to get the best shot. The PDA disbanded just a few weeks later, their best shot at getting some leverage now long past. No talks of unionization ever came up after that race. There was no need to have them. It was their best shot and they had failed. Not to mention the owner-driver has gone the way of the dodo bird. The chances of a NASCAR union getting off the ground these days are slim to none. So that was all there was to it. The worst race in NASCAR history. A brand new car, no one got to see the full potential of that day. Only 3 competitive drivers, 2 of the 3 of which nobody knew about. A field full of filler cars. A tire scandal that was resolved at the 11th hour. And of those 2 unknown drivers...
Okay, guys, that's it. We'll be back on later, guys. I don't tell you we'll be back on. I got videos to upload, and I got to wait for the post to come. So I'll talk to you guys later, and don't forget to like and hit the subscribe. If you have a suggestion, put it in the comment below. Thank you.